Emergency podcast, guys. Avisail Garcia, DFA'd by the Miami Marlins. They finally make the right decision and move on from Avi. They've had to swallow the money, but nevertheless, it is the right call. Tons to get into on an emergency podcast of Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
From England, and welcome to Locked On Marlins. This is your daily Marlins pod. I'm your host, of course, Peter Pratt. Hit me up at Miami Marlins _UK. There's going to be a lot of discourse going on Twitter right now. No doubt about it. Make sure you join us on Twitter. Let us know. No doubt Marlins Twitter will be ablaze right now. For those listening, thank you and welcome to the show on Tuesday, the 4th of June, officially known as Avisail Garcia DFA Day. I guess moving forwards anyway. This is your team every day, of course, and thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. Reminder, there is a YouTube channel. Make sure you hit subscribe. Over on the YouTube channel is also called Locked On Marlins. Easy to find, easy to subscribe, easy to enjoy the content, and easy to comment as well. Join me in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on this move, specifically Avisail Garcia, DFA'd by the Miami Marlins. Craig Mish speaking about it on the Fish on First Spaces recently, just a few days back. The expectation, Avisail Garcia is coming back. Dane Myers may be going the other way. I believe that was maybe from Romeo speaking to Dane Myers' wife. And the expectation was that Abby's near to coming back. Craig hit the pause button on that and said, hey, hold on a minute. Don't get ahead of yourself. Let's wait and see what happens this week. Nothing is set in stone. I think what Craig knew is this was probably coming down the pipe at this point. And so Craig Mish again, ahead of the curve probably around this topic area. But finally, the Marlins have made the move that's been expected for at least 6 months, maybe even longer, I guess, with this one. Unfortunately, with Avisail Garcia, he was signed to a sizable contract, the largest free agent contract that the Marlins have ever committed to anyone before, and offensive guy anyway. And for the Marlins, they get little to zero return on that investment, unfortunately. The Marlins right now move on from Avi. They also have to eat the money in 2020. For the current year, they're paying down the rest of his contract. They also have $12 million to cover in 2025, and they also have a $5 million buyout in 2026. So they're buying out a 26 at $5 million. They're eating $12 million in 25. So that's 17 for those that need help with some simple maths, and paying the rest of this year's as well, which is probably in the range of $8 million or so now as well. So it's a big expense to move on from Avisail Garcia. Nevertheless, the production not being good enough. It hasn't been good enough. Unfortunately, with these long-term contracts, you hope that the player can rediscover it. But unfortunately for the Marlins and Avisail Garcia, I say unfortunately, like Avi's, it's guaranteed money for Avi, so all good. But, he's a pro. He wants to do well. But the reality is it just didn't work out. But the Marlins were the ones that took the risk on this, and they had no way out of it. No way out. Unfortunately, no performance-based incentives, none of that. That's kind of part of baseball's DNA, the way they write these contracts. It's guaranteed dough. So even if Avi stinks it out, which he does and did, the Marlins still have to pay the money. This was a big commitment. This was coming, the Avisail Garcia signing. There was a lot of action here from the Marlins. They appointed Kim Ang after the 2020 campaign. Mike Hill was exiled. He was gone after he worked his magic to somehow get the Marlins to the postseason in 2020. Kim Ang hired. Kim Ang then oversaw the 2021 campaign. And unfortunately, that one fell very flat, coming off a playoff appearance in 2020. 2021, terrible season. Kind of feels familiar, right? Playoff season, next year, underperform. And that's what we saw in 2021. At that point, there was a view and a commitment from Bruce Sherman with Kim Ang to add to this roster. That included Avisail Garcia. It included Jorge Soler. It included trading for Jacob Stallings. It included trading for Joey Wendell, all-star at that point as well. The Marlins made a ton of moves, Avisail Garcia being the most expensive of them all. And at that point in time, he was coming off a very productive season at that point with the Milwaukee Brewers. He'd been with the Brew Crew for 2020 and then also in 2021. In 2021, he hit 29 home runs on the season in 515 plate appearances, 29 home runs, 86 RBIs, an OPS of 820, an OPS plus of 119. His career high, by the way, on the OPS plus was 138 back in 2017 when he was an all-star for the White Sox. So, in considering what Avi had done the prior year in 2021, he made a ton of sense. This power stick, power profile, can't even play center field. Just kind of talking around that, like Avi could play center. Do you remember that? 29 bombs, corner outfielder, young, still certainly in the prime, in his prime. And the expectation was he was going to be a big piece. Like, he signed for the Marlins when he was 30, 31. So we're expecting him to at least continue that level of production. Or if it was a dip, it's kind of a dip down to the type of production he had in like 2019, 2018. These are all campaigns where he's at least a slightly above average stick in many ways. Unfortunately for the Marlins, they did not get any of that from Avisail Garcia. None of it. What they got was an announcement, a signing situation where you got Sandy involved, you got Bruce Sherman involved, you got Kim Ang involved, Derek Jeter involved. Everyone's there. A big hoorah around Avisail Garcia. Sandy Alcantara, a big part of that as well, like holding up the jersey with Avi. A lot of people felt pretty excited about this situation. At the time, a lot of people called it out to say, this feels too long a contract. This feels like the Marlins have overstretched this one in terms of the amount of committed money. Over $50 million committed to Avisail Garcia at this point. Huge commitment. And I think that the feeling was at the time, and listen, I'd started hosting Locked On, and so we can go back and listen to exactly my thoughts, which could be a worrying thing to do at this point. But nevertheless, I'm going to do that and see exactly what my reaction was. But the gut feel, like the sense that I remember around that time is profile could be good, could be an impact stick. Felt like they went 1 year too much. Was it necessary to give, the 4 guaranteed years, I guess? And I think that was swirling around in our minds. Avisail Garcia then starts his Marlins career after signing this massive deal and having a load of PR puff around it. He turned up overweight to start the year. What a terrible look. And I think from a Marlins fan base perspective, the Marlins never forgave Avisail Garcia from that. Signed a big fat deal, turned up, he was overweight, he was fat. And he did not perform at all on the field. I mean, you couldn't start your career with an organization any worse. And that was it. That, straight away the Marlins fans, it was pretty clear, right? Avisail Garcia, just the grounded a double play machine. Those weak grounders rolled over down to third base on repeat, on loop. It was crazy. And frankly, during the first couple of months of the season, I think we were already starting to ask, like, what's happened to Avisail Garcia? And how long is this going to last? Honestly, I feel like that conversation was happening, partway into the first season with the Marlins in 2022. So he ended that campaign, by the way, his debut campaign with the Marlins. He ended up playing 98 games, 380 plate appearances. 8 home runs in that period. He hit 224. He had an OPS plus of just 64. Not optimal. In 2023, it was even worse in the amount of time on the field. 37 games. Again, he started the year and then basically was buried on the IL for the rest of the year. He hit 185 in 2023. This is the season the Marlins made the postseason, by the way. An OPS plus, an embarrassment of 48. Absolutely disgraceful production from Avisail Garcia. And like I said, he was hidden on the IL. And frankly, the Marlins fans didn't care. This is the funniest thing. He is being paid the most offensively. Obviously, Josh Bell has joined this year and overtaken him, but he's right up there in terms of dollars committed. And frankly, Marlins fans for the last 2 and a bit seasons have been praying that Avisail Garcia is either DFA'd or on the IL. Stunning turn of events. I think when we go back to where this one started, who signed this guy? Who greenlit it? And I think we know the answer. Yes, Kim Ang was around at that point. She'd been with the organization 1 year, but Derek Jeter was still around at that point. And as we know, the Marlins, it was everything went through Jeter. Everything was his call. This deal, this signing, this everything was Derek Jeter. Kim Ang was there for the signing day, like, she has to be. But this came down to Derek Jeter being convinced by Avisail Garcia that he was the right fit. Derek Jeter wanted to make a statement. Jeter always wanted to be competitive, by the way. I think that's the funny thing about Derek Jeter. Like, super competitive dude, born winner. Like, tanking was absolutely not in Jeter's DNA by any stretch. And he would have been disappointed by 2021, obviously. He was looking to re-energize, re-accelerate this Marlins club, get them back aligned. By that point, the prospects were flaming. Your Brinsons, your Montes, your Isans, all these guys that were a big part of the rebuild, they flamed by this point. And so Derek Jeter had to turn to Bruce Sherman and say, Bruce, farm's cooked. I've cooked it. I've whiffed on all of these trades. I've whiffed on all of them. If we're to be competitive, and we need to be competitive because we want to sell some seats, and we want to grow revenue, we're going to need to invest on the field to give ourselves a chance. Unfortunately, this was Derek Jeter's final kiss. That's the right way of phrasing it, to the Marlins organization. This situation with Avisail Garcia. I place no blame on this one to Kim Ang. I don't believe Kim Ang had anything to do with this. She may well have met with Avisail Garcia during negotiations. I don't know. But as we know, everything funneled through Jeter. It was a one-stop shop. Jeter greenlit it. Jeter wanted it. Bruce Sherman paid for it, and he'll continue paying for it for the next couple of years, no doubt. But overall, this was Derek Jeter. Avisail Garcia to the Marlins. In theory, the profile looked right. It did. However, minute one, there were already some concerns, already some suspicions. And unfortunately, it never improved from there. Going to carry on this conversation, of course. But before we do that, let's let you know about our good friends over at FanDuel. And we got the graphics pumped. And it's winner takes all time in the NBA and NHL. And FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Simply visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook. All right, guys, back here with me, Peter Pratt, on Tuesday, the 4th of June, and it is emergency podcast. Avisail Garcia DFA'd by the Miami Marlins. They are going to eat the money on Avi. Unfortunately, Avisail Garcia rehab start wasn't looking good. Rehab assignment, was not looking good with AAA. As we've seen, it's not been good in terms of production throughout his Marlins tenure. However, I must say, the short side platoon situation that he was put into to start this year it wasn't totally a disgrace this year. And so the question is at this point, like, is this, like, you have to look, like, Avi's in 24. I mean, it's only 51 plate appearances, but he's hit 240. An OPS plus, it's his best with the Marlins at 77. An OPS itself of 635. 2 home runs. So, was there a role that Avi could have played? I think this is the interesting point at this, at this juncture here for the Marlins, considering right now, 2024 cooked, fully cooked. Understand, like, the Marlins are fully out of it. At this point, the priority is first pick. Near enough. There's a lottery at the back end, but give yourselves the best chance to have the highest possible pick. That's the priority at this point. Tim Anderson rolling at shortstop. They'll continue to roll him out there at shortstop. The interesting part is they're happy to stay and keep Tim Anderson there at shortstop. This according to Craig Mish. This according to Skip Schumacher. They're happy with that. Tim Anderson's production is absolutely disgraceful as well. So the interesting part here is they're happy to move on from Avi, eat the money, use someone else, and actually accrue service time for that player. The player in particular focus here is Dane Myers. Dane Myers is the main beneficiary of this Avisail Garcia situation, him going to the IL. However, Dane Myers, his clock's ticking, continues to tick in a lost year. Would it have not made more sense? Because A, the Marlins have been terrible when Avisail Garcia has been on the field for them this year. And B, put Dane back in AAA, stop his service clock ticking along, and just plug Avi back in there in right field, and, the season will continue to explode. But no one really cares. So I think this is a really interesting decision. The fact that it's being done now, when there's nothing left for the Marlins to fight for this year. You do have to wonder, why now? I'm very interested to understand that. I'm very interested, people that are close to the organization, to understand exactly why now with Avisail Garcia. Considering, the season's cooked, you may as well leave him in there. You're paying him $12 million irrespective. Leave him in. So why now? Why not last year when they were in the hunt? I don't know. He was on the IL, so I suppose it didn't really matter in the grand scheme. But the timing is interesting. What is your favorite moments for Avisail Garcia? I mean, that is a kind of loaded question, to be honest. But favorite moments of Avisail Garcia. When I think of Avisail Garcia, there's a couple of things that spring to mind. Firstly, with Avi, my everlasting memory will be just grounders to third double plays, unfortunately. The other one will be the Fish Army guys going with the slide whistle to call out Avisail Garcia strikeouts. That is absolutely hilarious and will forever stick in my mind. In terms of on-field production, the one moment I think of Avisail Garcia performing in a positive way is that 2-run blast against the Cardinals in the 9th inning to get the Marlins. It was a go-ahead 2-run blast in the 9th that got Sandy Alcantara back out for the 9th. He then got himself into a bit of trouble, had an argument on the field with Don Mattingly to say, basically, Donnie, go get back to the bench. This is my game. Everything was looking like Sandy's coming out, but Donnie left him in there. Sandy delivered, and Sandy gave it the iconic point to Donnie straight after the game to say, Donnie, I've got you. Iconic. None of that would have been possible without that 2-run blast from Avisail Garcia. So that will forever live in my memory as a positive for Avisail Garcia. The rest of it, I can't really think of any positives. The only other image clearly that sticks in your mind is that Sandy Alcantara in the clubhouse giving his speech, everyone celebrating with Sandy, and Avisail Garcia sitting there looking severely disinterested, legs akimbo, messing around on his phone, no engagement, not listening, not talk. And it just kind of summed him up. Fat Avi, disengaged, terrible production. Granted, the sense is that Avisail Garcia wasn't a clubhouse cancer or anything like that. I'm not in the clubhouse. I don't know. It feels like maybe he was relatively well-liked. I don't know. But he didn't half do himself, he was constantly shooting himself in the foot. Turns up fat, looks lazy. It's kind of the Sixto thing, right? It's just all about the image you portray, the effort you put in. I don't know, frankly, but, I think from a Marlins fan base perspective, many people will just take a sigh of relief at this point. Like, I'm glad it's over. And Avisail Garcia, I think, may also have that same sigh of relief. I'm interested to see where he lands. We're going to talk about that in a sec. But I think from Avi's perspective, it never worked. It didn't look like it was going to continue working. The Marlins are going in a different direction. The timing is right, but the timing is also very, very interesting. Going to carry on the conversation here on an emergency version of Locked On Marlins, reflecting on Avisail Garcia's tenure with the Marlins. He is now being DFA'd. Wait to see what the future holds for Avi. But before we do that, let's let you know about our good friends over at eBay Motors. And passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Final segment here with me, Peter Pratt, on Tuesday, the 4th of June. Avisail Garcia DFA'd by the Marlins. It's the right call. The timing is interesting. Let me know your thoughts on the timing of this. Clearly, the Marlins had the ability to option Dane Myers back down. Clearly, the season is not going the way it's expected. Clearly, the Marlins are carrying some passengers right now anyway on the roster, i.e. Tim Anderson being the most obvious. However, the Marlins have made the move right now to DFA Avisail Garcia. It feels like a degree of relief for all parties, the fans, the organization, not Bruce Sherman, but Avisail Garcia as well. I'm very interested to see where Avi ends up this season. Gut feel is he probably will end up somewhere, some sort of minor league deal, and we'll see. I don't know. The other interesting thing around Avi, when again, it sticks in my mind, how about when the Braves potentially kind of called in, looking to do like money dump for money dump, bad player for bad player, and just see if you can like spin something. At that point, the Braves were shopping Marcell Ozuna in a swap for Avisail Garcia. They felt like they maybe could get Avi, change of scenery, and actually they could spin Avi back. For whatever reason, that deal didn't happen. Whether it was Kim that said no, whether it advanced any further, I don't know. But things could have been very different. Right now, Marcell Ozuna, I believe, from the betting side of things anyway, is the 4th favorite for the NL MVP. Wild, wild scenes. Nevertheless, Avisail Garcia DFA'd is the news that we've all been expecting for some time. It feels like this has been a long time coming with Avisail Garcia. I'm not sure that there's a ton of highlights to look and reflect back on. When you look at his body of work and overall numbers, that is, it's for sure he's underwhelmed in Miami. And that's probably an understatement. In the 3 seasons combined with Marlins, his OPS plus sits at 62. A total of 13 home runs in total. So the Marlins end up spending over $50 million on Avisail Garcia for 13 home runs, a 217 average, and a 582. Man, oh man, what a bust. What an absolute bust. The interesting thing here, and the word of caution and word of warning, I guess, is this is what can happen with free agents. This is what can happen. The thing that I don't know is what has happened. And I hope at some point we get some clarity from guys that are close to Avi. There's guys in the Marlins media crew that I know are closer to Avi and could probably share his story. I'd love to hear his story. I'd love to hear Avisail Garcia's view on what went wrong. What changed from 2021 and 29 home runs for the Milwaukee Brewers? What changed when he came to Miami? Yes, the ballpark's different. But from Avisail Garcia's perspective, yes, there may be a little bit more pressure on him because now he's, one of the highest earners and highest paid guys. But what happens? How do we account for such a severe drop in production? I honestly, I have no idea. I know he came in heavy, and I've already talked about that multiple times. But I have no idea how this happened. None. And like I said, maybe Avi will catch on somewhere, and maybe he'll return to his former glory. Maybe there's an answer for this. I'm going to text some of the guys and see if they know, because, now the misery's over. Maybe there's a way to share more information. But something went wrong with Avisail Garcia here. For whatever reason, never was able to overcome it. Yes, there was a lot of time on the IL. And some of that did feel a little bit like that was the way of the Marlins managing the situation, particularly last season, where the team's rolling. The team is absolutely rolling, and they make a decision. Actually, we're happy to just stash you on the IL. We don't want you to come back. We think it would be a hindrance. And if maybe you push it and want to come back, then we're going to end it now anyway. I don't know. There's a lot of questions here, right? Like, there's a lot of questions around Avi. What is unquestioned is the performance has been terrible. I can't speak to the attitude, but outwardly, things don't look great. But I don't believe that's probably a fair or accurate read. And so there's some question marks we have around that. I saw Noah Berger, I think, talking about it, saying how he was a well-liked guy in the clubhouse, etc. So he may well, personality-wise, he may have been a good fit in the clubhouse. So what happened production-wise? What went wrong? What's at the root of this? So many unanswered questions with Avisail Garcia. But 50+ million down the drain for the Marlins. And like I said, this is where they will tread with caution for the future. Considering the Rays model, you'll never see this type of deal ever again for the Marlins. Every offseason will come around. And every offseason, guys like me will be talking about all these free agents that are available. Juan Soto could be on the market next year, by the way. But we'll be talking about it. But it's a waste of time. The Marlins will never sign another contract and another guy like Avisail Garcia, a guy that commands multiple years and over 50 million. It's just not going to happen. Maybe there's some extensions that the Marlins have, but the business model isn't this. The business model is not that. It's completely changed. You will never see it again. And frankly, that's probably not a bad thing, considering what we've seen with Avisail Garcia specifically. And actually the market itself, the market has changed quite drastically. And we've seen that this offseason, the way the free agent market went. There was no Avisail Garcia contracts being handed out. No 4-year committed, 50 million committed to, relatively average overall, slightly above average hitters. There's none of that. Those guys were getting 1-year deals for 5 million or less. Baseball's changing. Baseball is absolutely changing. Very interested to see how that type of topic, and this is a bigger topic for another day, but that type of topic blends into the next CBA discussion and agreement. If all of a sudden these free agents at the back end of their controlled years have no market, then that's a problem for those guys. And they'll want to address that in the next CBA, I'm sure of it. Nevertheless, guys, going to wrap it up there. Emergency podcast reacting to the news that Avisail Garcia has been DFA'd by the Marlins. They eat the money. Nearly $25 million worth of money that they've eaten now. But frankly, they've eaten this whole contract anyway. It's been $53 million worth of bust. Complete bust, Avisail Garcia. What went wrong? I don't know. The production was never there. the body started in the wrong way and was never there. He was on the IL too much. A lot of money, no time on the field, no production when on the field, and some bad PR. The Marlins have made the move. The timing is very interesting to me, considering where they're at this year and what it means for other guys. But frankly, I'm pleased. I'm pleased that the Marlins have moved on. It's the right thing to do. Avisail Garcia will probably see it the same way. And I think from a Marlins fan base perspective, we're all delighted that we get to continue to see Dane Myers, for example, on this roster. We're going to see some sprinklings of more guys maybe later after the deadline. And it's going to be starting to really look to the future for the Marlins. This is one of the past, and it was time to move on. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen, guys. I've been Peter Pratt, and I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. Probably digging into this topic in more detail and more reaction. I look forward to seeing you then.